What is up, Knicks fans? Welcome back to yet another episode of Fireside Knicks with your hosts, Dylan and Ryan. It's good for me to be back on here. I know I took a couple of days off, but I'm back now, and I'm excited to talk about the Knicks. And today, we have a pretty interesting topic. It's about Tom Thibodeau. Now, this is a guy who we all know has been a major talking point pretty much since opening night. We've been talking about Tom Thibodeau all season long, whether or not he's the guy to lead us to a championship. The conversation has really heated up in recent days, especially with the Eastern Conference Finals going on. It seemed like in the first half of Game 3, every single person on Knicks Twitter, including myself, wanted Tom Thibodeau gone. Second half, a lot of people's opinions seemed to change because it seemed like he made some adjustments, which we're going to get into. There's a very interesting topic to have about this, and we're going to discuss really if his job is kind of safe right now or if he still needs to show a little bit more to ensure his job security for next season and beyond. So Ryan, first off, tell me how you're doing, and secondly, what do you think about Tom Thibodeau so far this postseason, and how would you evaluate his performance as a coach?
Yeah, so, look, I actually think there are in this series, I think this series is probably the one that fans are the most upset with Tibbs because of the fact that unlike the Boston series, where losing against Boston in that series would simply be a reflection of Boston being a better roster, this is a series where the Knicks should dominate. And not dominate, they should win. This is the series that the Knicks should not blow big leads in. I know Indiana's a good team. They're a very good team. You could argue they are the better roster, but they're not as good as Boston's roster. The thing that I think gets me going with Tibbs is his usage of, or his reliance on the starting five originally. I actually thought in game two he did a really good job of like, hey, yes, we threw out our starting five to start the game, but that lineup very rarely saw the court together throughout the entire first half. And then to start the second half and to close the second half, basically, he went with that same starting five. That really confused me. Tibbs is someone who I think it's hard to say he's definitively the problem with the Knicks because you also have to assign blame to the players, right? When players struggle, players should get blamed for it. But the coach also has a substantial amount of data that indicates that this starting five hasn't been productive. He did switch it up in game 3. They ended up winning game 3. I don't think they won game 3 exclusively because they didn't throw out the same starting five. Lineups during a game matter just as much as your starting five, who you close with, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the lack of adjustments can be very frustrating, and it does make me question his long-term viability as the coach of a team you're trying to win an NBA championship with. But, Dylan, I don't think he's a bad enough coach to stop you from winning the title, if that makes sense. But he has shown at times that his stubbornness with certain lineups is to the point that it can cost you games. And when you're costing yourself games, that is costing you a title. So I go back and forth in this all the time. Is Tom Thibodeau the coach of the New York Knicks? If the New York Knicks win a title, is Tom Thibodeau going to be their head coach? I lean towards no. Because of what I mentioned with the starting five. But I don't think it's completely no. I don't think it's door shut no. I don't think this is if they don't fire Tibbs, they will never win anything of note. But that noise is getting louder, and understandably so, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. And, this is like my thing with Tibbs, okay? So, he made a lot of adjustments in Game 3. We noticed that. He changed the starting five. He played DeLon Wright and Landry Shamet, which at first I heavily criticized. I was sitting there during the first half going, why is DeLon Wright and Landry Shamet sharing the floor in a must-win game? I never understood that decision. But they ended up winning the game. They ended up being major reasons why the Knicks ended up winning the game. So I kept my mouth shut. I said, you know what? Okay, maybe I'm going to let Tibbs see what he's got about this roster and figure it out. But that's kind of my thing. I don't know if he has a feel for this roster. I don't know if he understands really what this team's best strengths are scheme-wise. And when I say that, I mean, we've seen the kind of issues all year. For example, Mikal Bridges not getting enough shots during some games. Karl-Anthony Towns not taking enough threes and more post-ups, which I understand a big man you want to play near the basket, but we know his strength is three-point shooting. Even the Jalen Brunson ISOs at the end of every game, which, credit to Brunson, he is fantastically clutch, but we can all agree that the ISO ball at the end of the game is pretty ugly hoops, right? So when we break it down that way, you kind of look at Tibbs and go, well, why is he doing these old school schemes that are kind of outdated? Because nowadays teams shoot threes like it's nothing. We saw it in Game 1, a 15-point lead in 2.5 minutes, gone like that. Because Aaron Nesmith hit, 6 threes in the span of 2 minutes? I've never seen a guy get that hot before. You could credit part of that to just a guy getting ridiculously hot, but you can also blame scheme a little bit because the Knicks have always been a lackadaisical three-point defending team over the past few seasons under Tom Thibodeau, and that kind of irks me because of the whole drop coverage thing. And, some people use drop coverage in a very basketball way. They kind of just say it to just criticize Tibbs, but it's kind of true in this instance. We saw in Game 1, for example, I mean, they weren't stepping up on any of the three-pointers whatsoever in that final 2.5 minutes. That is why Indiana came back, because they kind of just let them shoot. Now, I understand, three-point shots are kind of the tougher shots, so you want them to take it, but when they're shooting that hot, you can't just let them get hot. After 2 makes, you need to step up. It was that simple. You know what I mean? You were protecting a huge lead. I mean, a lead that big in that situation had literally never been blown in a playoff game before. Ever. By any team. Knicks made history in the wrong way. And the Knicks have made a lot of good history this postseason. But that was a really bad reflection on the Knicks and on Thibodeau. And Game 2, a lot of the same questionable decisions. I mean, Cameron Payne playing minutes in the fourth quarter. What was that about? What was that about? I'm glad he, switched his ways and didn't play Payne at all in Game 3. That was good. It was a good bounce back. But you could argue right now that the Knicks should at least be up 2-1. Matter of fact, you could argue they should be up 3-0 right now if it weren't for some of these very simple miscues. Now, as you said, the players deserve some blame too. It's not 100% Tom Thibodeau. Players are underperforming. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. There's basic defensive concepts that these guys who have been around for 10 years are not getting. Cough, cough, Karl Anthony Towns, who we have criticized heavily on the defensive side all year, and he's gotten that, criticism throughout his entire career, so I don't expect that to change, unfortunately. But my thing with the whole roster feel, we have lineups that work. The Knicks they statistically have lineups that are very effective. And it took Tom Thibodeau until going down 0-2 in the series to finally make an adjustment. An adjustment that we have been calling for a while, even during the regular season. Towards the end of the regular season, I think we had been calling for Mitch to start. And don't get me wrong, I don't think Mitchell Robinson starting is the, 100% solution. There's going to be flaws with that lineup. Mitchell Robinson is very limited offensively. He gets a lot of rebounds, but, he's not exactly a floor spacer, and he obviously is horrible from the free throw line. So I understand the limitations there with starting him, but the whole point was defense. You have OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges on the floor together, and yet the Knicks are, statistically a league average defensive team. That shouldn't happen. That really shouldn't happen. You have 2 elite wing defenders on your team. There's no reason you should struggle to defend the perimeter that much. I never understood it, and I also don't understand why he continued to play Cat at the 5 throughout the postseason when it clearly was not working. The numbers do not lie. The Knicks are getting outscored by 50 when the starters are out there this postseason, which is just ridiculous because that starting 5 on paper is loaded. You have 2 25-plus point per game scorers in Brunson and Towns, 2 all-NBA defense level players in Bridges and Anunoby, and one of the best role players in the league in Josh Hart, with the starting 5 that they kept rolling with. There's no reason that unit should be struggling as much as they were. At some point, that has to fall on the coach. It has to. Now, I'm not going to spend this entire episode ripping the coach. I give him credit where it's due because I do think he did spearhead the turnaround to begin with several years ago. I think he's a big reason why Julius Randle became as good as he became, why guys like Isaiah Hartenstein and Dante DiVincenzo were able to get paid. But at the same time, when you have a roster as good as this and it struggles to really be that much better than your past rosters, it just tells me that Thibodeau doesn't have a feel for this roster. Now, obviously this series is not over. Obviously, I think right now, too, I think his job security as a whole is a lot safer than it was, say, during Detroit. Because I think during Detroit, even though you won that series, I think that series was a bit of a bad reflection on Tibbs. You should have smacked those guys, respectfully. You should have. The talent disparity wasn't even close. Detroit, I'm not even trying to disrespect Detroit, but the Knicks have so much more talent than they did, and there was no reason that series should have been as close as it was. And then against Boston, they ended up beating them. They beat them pretty handily, and I gave Tibbs his flowers for that. I thought he made good adjustments. I thought he coached it well. But then I kind of see that, maybe it's just the product of Joe Mazzulla not being as good of a coach as we all thought. That could also be, 2 things can be true here. I'm kind of just floating ideas around here, but at the end of the day, I think the outcome of this series is really going to tell a lot about Thibodeau's future with the team, and that's what I want to get into next. So, Ryan, in terms of his job security, right? And I posted this on Twitter yesterday, and a lot of people, it was a big talking point about it. Do you think his job is safe right now as we speak, or do you think he needs to prove a little bit more, with the rest of this series or the rest of this playoffs to really ensure that his job is safe going forward?
Yeah, to be completely honest, I think that where we're at with the New York Knicks in terms of their lineups and their structure, with Tom Thibodeau, I think the thing that really bothers me that you honed on is the sample size of games played without adjustments. knowing that lineup has struggled. The thing that you're going to have with Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns out there is that their defense is going to be a problem. Jalen Brunson he tries, but he's 6'1", right? Like there's trying.
You can only expect so much from him on that end.
Right. He's 6'1". What do you want him to do? What do you want him to do? Step up to Tyrese Halliburton and lock him down? Like, absolutely not. Karl Anthony Towns, he's 7 feet tall, and he's not a good defender. And there's no, if you unlock his defensive potential, he's a bad defensive player. Look at the numbers with Jalen Brunson on the court and Karl Anthony Towns on the court with him, and look at their numbers when they are on the court but don't share the court with each other. These two guys are incredibly impactful players individually. They are not a good fit together. You have to build your starting lineup entirely around covering their flaws. And that's where Mitch being out there is important. Yes, your spacing is going to suck. Well, guess what? You're 27th in three-point attempts this season anyways. 27th per game. I'd understand if the Knicks were, this high-flying three-point offense like the Indiana Pacers. And you're like, you can't make certain certain sacrifices to improve your defense because you lose the big advantage on offense. What is the advantage you're losing? Teams are treating Josh Hart the same way they're treating Mitchell Robinson. Leave him out there. That's what they're doing. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Josh Hart cannot be the third best defender on a team that has Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns on the court together. Just can't. I've suggested Deuce McBride because I understand you can't play Mitchell Robinson for 40 minutes. And McBride, I think, is a better defensive player than Josh Hart. But I do understand you're also losing some size there. It's not by enough for me to think that they'd be worse defensively. I think they'd be better. But they also have never tried that lineup. They've never tried. I looked at the data in the postseason. McBride has never shared minutes with all the other four starters minus Josh Hart. I think that's crazy. We got a Landry Shamet, DeLon Wright lineup before we got a Miles McBride with the four other starters line. But I think that's crazy, and that's where I get frustrated with Tom Thibodeau. I think that's where fans go, hey, this guy you can't win a title with this guy because, as you mentioned, let's kind of look at what wins in the NBA. Defense and three-pointers. That's what wins in the NBA. Look at the best teams in the NBA. They're either really good at shooting the three ball or they're really good defensively. Indiana isn't great defensively. They're not bad. They're pretty average. They're okay. They have stretches where they look rough, but on the season they're relatively average. They're incredible offensively. That is the best offense in the NBA, in my opinion. They have shooters everywhere. Boston is a great defensive team who also shot a historic amount of threes. Oklahoma City is a historically dominant defense with a good three-point shooting lineup. Not a dominant, but a good three-point shooting lineup. The Knicks do not qualify for either under this current starting five. And as you mentioned, maybe that's not a talent thing. Maybe they could do it, and they just need to be coached differently. But also, maybe the coach should make the adjustments. Maybe the coach should realize he has not gotten the most out of that personnel. That personnel group does not fit either his scheme or his scheme doesn't fit them. It's one or the other. And one final note I'd like to point out here when it comes to my frustrations. I don't understand how a team acquired Karl Anthony Towns and finished 27th in three-point attempts per game and thought they would win basketball games. They thought they were going to win basketball games in the postseason in big games doing it. Have they done it? Yes. Is this Eastern Conference Finals run enough for me to go, yep, hang your laurels. If they never get past here, I'm happy? No. If you want to, I've said this before, if you want the media to stop talking about you like you're the Charlotte Hornets, like you're the New Orleans Pelicans, like you're, if you want to look at other sports, like if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Chicago White Sox or the Colorado Rockies, you've got to stop playing like it. You have to start winning like you're not one of those teams. You haven't won a title in 50 years. The hallmark for Dylan and I's lifetime as Knicks fans, and both of us are 20-plus years old, is this Eastern Conference Finals run. This is the best it's ever been. And in this run, which, look, you have to get lucky to be here. You have to get lucky. You just have to. You can never win a title without some degree of luck. Boston last year, they didn't catch Denver. The entire Eastern Conference was decimated with injuries. They didn't play a single good team in the Eastern Conference not good team, but a single team in the Eastern Conference that could beat them. None of those teams are going to beat them in their current states. They were definitely going to crush Dallas. Dallas did not have any business being in the same finals as Boston. Look at Denver. They drew Miami. Imagine if we drew a team as good as Miami in the finals, or in the Eastern Conference Finals even, we'd be here. We'd be in the finals. We'd win the finals. Look at Los Angeles, the Lakers. They drew a not great Miami team. Boston played Golden State. Golden State played a Boston team that made a ton of mistakes in that series. You have to get lucky to get there. You just have to. We got lucky. We're here. We're here because of some luck. We're here because Boston was a little decimated. we played really well. Don't get me wrong, but there's no shame in admitting that there's luck in this. We're healthy. I mean, Dylan, last year, how many of these players were? How many starters were down last year? OG, Mitch wasn't a starter, but he was a role player.
Basically all of them. Basically all of them.
And I'm not disparaging him because he left. I love Isaiah Hartenstein, but let's be honest, the better center in the postseason last year was Mitchell Robinson. No Mitch, no OG. Josh Hart was banged up, which is very rare. Jalen Brunson dealt with a fractured thumb and then broke his hand in Game 7. I don't think it changed the outcome, but he did do that. You know what I mean? I mean,
the entire team was hurt.
Healthy. Who's the notable injury? We have Mitch. Mitch is healthy. That's a win on its own. You cannot guarantee that next year. This might be your best
And an even
chance.
more fun fact, not a single rotation player has hit the injury report this postseason.
Dylan, do you think you can bet on that happening next year?
Zero.
You can't.
Zero.
So if this team doesn't win the Eastern Conference Finals, they blew their best chance to get there, most likely. To get to the finals, most likely. Not saying that they're not going to get there again, that they'll never get there again, but under this group, they may never have a better chance. They have to pay Bridges soon. This roster is going to get more expensive to keep together. It's going to be harder to have depth. Depth is already an issue. Depth has kind of been an issue. Bench scoring has been an issue for a couple of years now. If Tom Thibodeau squanders it, yeah, I'm comfortable moving on. I am, because this is a series you have to win. This series you have to win. Indiana feels the same way, and sometimes, yeah, you lose and you got to make tough decisions. You have to. How do you think Boston felt trading Marcus Smart? That was a tough decision, man. Good one though. Won a title doing it. They'll do it again. Mm-hmm. They'll do it 2 times. They'll do it every single day of the week. Got to make tough decisions to win the finals. Have to, Dylan. Have to.
Yeah, and I want to touch on this next point because, some people have been saying that, simply making it to the Eastern Conference Finals in the first place, guarantees that Tom Thibodeau is safe, right? That's a safe assumption. But however, why I think it's not exactly as, guaranteed as some people say, wasn't making it this far always the expectation? Wasn't it that the expectation coming into the season to make it this far? Yes, you took a step forward. Kudos to them. They've taken a step forward and make the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in me and Ryan's lifetime. We have never seen a Knicks team make it this far. But the expectation was always make the Eastern Conference Finals. They're here now. But, if you lay an egg, then how does that look on the coach? Does it really look like you belong there, or does it look like you kind of just got lucky? And that's kind of what I'm saying here, is because, I think the Knicks, talent-wise, have so much talent. I think the roster itself is very much capable of winning a championship. Matter of fact, I'll even go as far as say I think Tom Thibodeau is a good coach. I do think he's a good coach. I'm not even trying to say he's a bad coach. I just don't know if he's the guy for this specific roster. This roster that I believe can win a championship, I don't know if Tom Thibodeau is that guy. Obviously, the playoffs are not over. The Knicks are not out of the playoffs. They could easily rip the next 3 against Indiana, move on to the finals, and somehow beat OKC or Minnesota, whichever one of them comes out of the West in the NBA Finals. That could easily happen. And the Knicks could win a title, and I will eat all my bad words about Tom Thibodeau. But as where we stand right now, there's been numerous mistakes I can point at to Tom Thibodeau and sit here the entire episode and go off on about it. I could think of Game 5 against Detroit when Brunson and Hart are sitting at the scorer's table for 3 whole minutes while the lead is slipping away. I can think back to Game 3 against Boston when they let them shoot 22 or 25 3-pointers or something like that and just let them keep ripping them up. I could think back to Game 1, obviously, against Indiana when they blew the lead. I could think back to Game 2 against Indiana when Cameron Payne played 3 crucial minutes in the fourth quarter and they went down by 9 and only lost the game by 5, arguably making the big difference. I could go back to all those things, but I'm not going to sit here and dive into those.
And you can fire a head coach over that. I want to clarify
this. Yes.
Let's call it what it is. You can fire a head coach because of these things. There are teams who have fired head coaches for less, who have fired head coaches who have done more for way less than this.
Look at the Toronto Raptors, for example. Back in, I don't remember the exact year, but it was probably 2018, the year before they won the chip or something like that, when Dwayne Casey led the Raptors to the first seed or whatever, 50-plus wins, crazy good year. They end up losing to LeBron in the playoffs because, let's be honest, who was able to beat LeBron? But, you look at that. Dwayne Casey wins Coach of the Year, all this stuff. The team looks like they take a leap, looks like they could be something in a few years. They fired him. Same year he won Coach of the Year. So making it this, and I know it's a very loose example, but my point here is simply reaching a benchmark of, you made the Eastern Conference Finals, you beat Boston, your job is automatically safe. I wouldn't say that's necessarily true. I'm not saying it's not a
And it was
invalid
the right
point.
call. And here's the other
Yeah.
thing too: is Dwayne Casey gone on to have a superstar coaching career? No disrespect to the man,
No,
but
no.
they made the right
And
call.
look what
did.
happened the next year for Toronto. Where did they go next year? They won the title.
And I'm not saying Nick Nurse is, this all-time great head coach, but Nick Nurse is a pretty well-regarded head coach, and is commanded a great deal of respect. And I'll say
He's a
this
championship coach. Championship coach is a championship coach.
and I'll say this too: even when you win a title, guys still get moved on from. Guys don't, you have to be, if you want to win at the NBA now with the CBA and the way that windows work, and these windows are very shortened and these pockets of opportunity, you need to be innovative and a little lucky with health, and at the forefront of innovation with the NBA. You have to be adapting to modern NBA schemes. Rick Carlisle's Indiana Pacers, their offense, Dylan, I feel like I'm watching two. Sometimes it feels like I'm watching an AAU team play.
It gets me tired. It makes me feel like I'm on the court running with them. I get tired watching them play.
Sometimes I watch the Indiana Pacers and I think I'm watching a team that looks just so polished, and then I'm watching the Knicks offense and I'm looking at, please God, bail me out, Jalen Brunson. It's
like this when you look at the two rosters. Okay, like Indiana has good players. I'm not even trying to disrespect those guys. They're talented players, good players. But when you look at the talent difference between them and the Knicks, right? Whose roster are you taking? You're gonna take the Knicks roster. They have two top 25, 25 plus scorers in the league, and a well-rounded starting five, great defenders on paper, all this stuff. You're probably gonna take them. Indiana has deeper roster, meaning they have Halliburton, they have Siakam, who are both very good players, but you wouldn't consider them like top 10, top 15 players like you would possibly to Jalen Brunson and Cat. And they have good depth pieces like Neesmith, Nembhard making an impact. Obi Toppin, TJ McConnell, guys like that coming off the bench making an impact. The Knicks don't have that luxury, of course, of having the depth, but at the same time, there is a big talent gap. So at the end of the day, you would think, and especially in the playoffs too, when you play your starters much more than your bench guys, you would think that the Knicks should have the edge. They should. But I think what we're really seeing here is a big coaching disparity. I think Rick Carlisle, I'm not even over here clamoring Rick Carlisle is this super great coach, amazing coach, but he's a very good coach, and he's proving it these last two seasons with this Pacers team that has made it to the Eastern Conference Finals 2 years in a row. I know last year they beat up a bunch of banged up teams and got to the ECF and ended up getting swept by a healthy Boston team. I know, but they still made it there, and as you allude to, sometimes you gotta get lucky. And this year, the Pacers kind of proved that last year wasn't exactly a fluke. They made it back here. I know Cleveland was banged up. I know the Bucks were banged up and also just not a serious basketball team. But you don't accidentally beat a 1 seed that had, 64, 65 wins in the regular season? That doesn't happen by accident. I understand Cleveland was banged up again, like I said, but it doesn't just happen for no reason. You know what I mean? And I credit that, and it sounds contradictory because the Knicks beat the Celtics that nobody thought was going to happen. So it's like, oh, well, they beat them, so shouldn't you be, praising Tom Thibodeau for that? I can give him his props, and I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh, I want Tom Thibodeau fired right now. I know I've made some tweets that have been very reactionary, but when I sit here right now rationally thinking about everything, I'm not going to sit here and be like, let's fire Tom Thibodeau tomorrow. No, I'm not going to say that yet, because I want to see what he can show me. I want to see if he can make me eat my criticism.
I'll also say you can beat Boston and do it with a flawed coaching scheme. You can do that. They play.
I said it before too, because it could have also very much been more of a Joe Mazzulla was not coaching a good series thing as opposed to Tom Thibodeau was coaching a good series. If that makes sense.
I would also like to say,
know what I mean?
Maybe that series is a reflection that the talent gap wasn't massive, but the coaching gap was, and that was the difference. That the Boston Celtics are this well-oiled machine that takes a lot of threes, creates a lot of good looks, and hits a lot of them, and has a very fluid, very fluid defensive scheme. And the Knicks' talent outshined for 6 games. And again, all that matters in the playoffs is whether you win or not, right?
Doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't matter how you do it.
But good coach teams can lose to poorly coached teams. Good teams, good talent can rise up and kind of just do a job. And this team does rely a lot on, hey, can the talent bail us out? I mean, you talk about the final possession, fourth quarter. Knicks need to get a bucket here. What's their play? Jalen Brunson bail me out. Do you know what every defense in the NBA is geared up to do when the Knicks have the ball?
Double team him and force someone else to take it.
Right. every single time, the New York Knicks have the ball in their hands, and it's the final possession, and they need a shot. Do you know the defense will do everything to make sure Jalen Brunson does not get a good look. So that means Jalen Brunson, has to, with 5 seconds left on the clock, pull up from, Guangdong, because no one's on him, and he's going to get fouled if he tries to pull up from any closer. And they're going to take away the opportunity for him to try to hit a three. Yes, it works, and it's cool when he hits the game winner against the Detroit to basically win the series. Do you know what's not cool? Relying on it every single time. This is not Hollywood, man. This is not Hollywood. Even LeBron James. How many times did LeBron James take the final shot in the fourth quarter of a big game? And I'm not saying that to disparage him. Do you know how many times they drew up plays where LeBron is the decoy because they know they're going to just double LeBron? And you know what's the difference? These LeBron teams, 2018, did they have a guy like Karl Anthony Towns that he could pass the ball to and be like, hey, man, you take the big shot? I saw Obi Toppin on Karl Anthony Towns. I saw Karl Anthony Towns have the ball in the fourth quarter of game 1 and pass out. Dude, you have Obi Toppin on you. Jalen Brunson has to be open he has to be wide open. No one should be on him if you're gonna pass that ball. That's the only situation you pass that ball. You are 7 feet tall, my man, and that's where coaching. I don't think it's all coaching. Dude, you're 7 feet tall.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Some of these things could be on the players because the lack of aggression. Karl Anthony Towns, as you said, not taking it on him, and Mikal Bridges also loving to take those fadeaway mid ranges, which give me too much R.J. Barrett flashbacks. But
that's a great point too. Like, hey, I need my role players. Because let's be honest, Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby are not stars; they're role players. Now, star caliber role players are a real thing. Derek White is a quote unquote role player. Derek White is one of the most impactful players in the NBA. Every team should want Derek White. But he doesn't take these stupid shots. Does he take some stupid threes? Sure. But you know what, Derek White? Do you know who's one player who they could pull up from anywhere and my heart's gonna stop? Derek White. He could pull up from the.
I was literally having this conversation before, but I've had this conversation with people before.
Yes.
He's one of those guys that you feel like is always taking the right shot. He takes a lot of shots. He's willing to shoot it, and you feel like he's always hitting the big ones. You'll be on a run, and he hits the timely shot that stabs you right here, and it's just painful.
Do I think Derek White would be as effective if Derek White played on the not San Antonio Spurs? Yeah, you know what, the San Antonio Spurs.
He was on the Spurs. He was on the Spurs at the beginning of his career.
That's kind of why I wanted to use that example here. Was Derek White this uber efficient role player when he was on the Spurs? No, he was a good player, but he was not this uber efficient. He wasn't even a really good 3-point shooter.
Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure he was pretty inefficient from 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you said.
I remember when he got traded, I lost my mind because I wanted the Knicks to get him, and that is one of my feather in the cap wins when it comes to basketball takes. But I didn't think he was going to be this good. Coaching, that's what coaching does. What I loved about Tibbs, and I still do love about Tibbs, is that it kind of sometimes felt like it didn't matter who they had at center. They could figure it out. Precious Achiuwa could win them ball games at times, and Precious Achiuwa is not a rotation caliber player for a title contender. I'm sorry. But Isaiah Hartenstein, and Isaiah Hartenstein was what did he sign for $4 million, $5 million? I think it was a super cheap deal.
It was a 4. Hartenstein's contract is with OKC. It's 3 years, 89. Well, with us, it was $8 million a year. It was 2 years, 16 million, or something like that.
It was nothing. And Tibbs coached this guy up to be a stud. This guy's a stud. Mitchell Robinson has been a phenomenal player. I'm not saying that's on Tibbs, but he's good, and Tibbs has coached him for a very long time, and I'm going to give Tibbs that win there. But it feels kind of with everything else, I don't know why Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby aren't this. Why are they not what the Boston Celtics role players are? Why are they not what the Pacers role players are? And I think that's scheme. Mikal Bridges doesn't have the spacing to take these super efficient mid-range shots. He actually has a really good mid-range shot. I want to clarify. I think you and I would agree. When he gets a good look from there, I want him to take that shot. But how many times is he going to get a good look from there in a game with the spacing we have?
Not very often.
And how many times OG is super efficient when he's open from the perimeter and close to the rim? How many times does he have space to just drive to the basket?
It's not often. And that's a scheme thing, because when you have Karl Anthony Towns, who is an exceptional three-point shooter, and he's playing towards the basket, you're not using his strength. And that's what I criticize Tibbs for, because players like that, you got to utilize their strength. I criticize it with Mikal Bridges a bit too, because I've given Mikal Bridges a bunch of crap all year. I have. I'll admit it. And I've praised him for when he's done good things, you know what I mean? People may say I'm fair weather because I do that, but I really don't care. I see it how it is. I call it how it is. But regardless, when I see Mikal Bridges kind of just standing in the corner all game, and then I check the box score after the game and I see that he took 6 shots, that's stupid. That's stupid. I don't care how poorly he had been in some games or how inefficient he's been. You gotta get him touches, man. There's only one way a player can get going, and that's by giving him the ball. Look what happens when they give Karl-Anthony Towns the ball. Look what happened in Game 3, just 2 nights ago. You gave Karl-Anthony Towns the ball, you let him run the offense for a little bit because Brunson was on the bench with foul trouble, and he won us the game. 20 points in the fourth quarter. That's what superstars do. That is what good players do. And when you maximize their talents, they can get you far. It can get you very far. And that's what I give Tibbs a lot of crap for. Go ahead.
Yeah, is it fair weather to say, we want our team, I want the New York Knicks to be the Boston Celtics. I want them to be that team. Not this year's Boston Celtics, but I want them to be the Boston Celtics. Every year they're contenders. They don't get to the Eastern Conference Finals. That city's going to burn down. Getting to the finals is a standard. The standard is very high. The bar is very high. I want to be that team. I want that franchise, that organizational consistency. I want that for the New York Knicks. They have not had that in their franchise's history, really. Maybe in the earlier days. This is well before you and I are alive, before my parents were, I don't know if my parents were alive the last time the Knicks won a finals. I want that for this franchise, and I don't think it's fair weather fan to be like, that should be what we want. That should be the expectation for a big market team with all the resources, the allure of the city, all of that stuff, a passionate fan base, a diehard fan base, and ultimately, an organization that's taken a massive step forward. Let's call it for what it is. This organization was garbage 6 years ago. They are not a garbage organization. They're not. But they're not the Celtics, and they're not the Thunder, and they can be there. They're right there. The talent. They just beat Boston. They're as talented as Boston, or close to as talented as Boston. They just beat them. They're not as optimized, though. That's what the Thunder are. That's what the Celtics are. They're super talented and uber optimized. When you watch the Thunder play basketball, I hate to use this term, it's like watching basketball porn. They're the most well-optimized. They make all these smart passes, great ball movement, the defensive reps. Oh, my God, don't even get me started. It's gorgeous. I'm watching gorgeous basketball. It's like, when you watch people go like the Spurs, it's the beautiful game. It's this fundamentally strong basketball. You know what that is? It's good ball movement, great defense, take efficient shots, create efficient shots. That's just good basketball. It's incredible. And this team can do that. They have the personnel. Jalen Brunson is not a high assist guy. He's an average 10 a game. He's a good playmaker. Cat, sometimes Cat will make a pass that I don't think is possible for a guy who's a center. I sometimes he just makes those kinds of passes.
Do them and one mixtape passes.
Dude, how many guys on this team can score close to the rim and from deep and can hit some mid-range shots? There are at least 3 guys I can name that I think can do it. Cat, Brunson, Mikal Bridges can shoot kind of from anywhere and score from kind of from anywhere. And Nobi, I don't think, should be taking a bunch of mid-rangers, but I think he could convert enough of them. Hart is not a reliable enough jump shooter, but he is. He has superstar-level ability to get to the basket. It's kind of weird. I don't understand how that's the skill he has, but sure. It's
that's what maniacs do.
Miles McBride has been awesome this postseason. I want to give my flowers to him. He's a reason why we're here. Mitch, dude, Mitch rocks. Oh, he can't shoot free throws. Yeah, I'm aware. I'm aware that I'd rather claw my eyes out than watch him try and shoot a jump shot. I'm aware. I don't care. Isaiah Hartenstein couldn't shoot for shit. No disrespect to Isaiah Hartenstein. He wasn't adding spacing. You saw Indiana last year putting a guy on him on the perimeter? Hell no. But rebounds, defense, that's all I need him for. That's all I need Mitch to do. He could sit down during the offensive possessions. I don't care.
It's especially what we need too when those are the biggest problems. When those are the biggest problems that the Knicks are having with their starting 5 that they've used all season. Then that's what you need. You have to sacrifice a little bit of offense for it. And the argument I have made for Mitch starting over Hart, if Josh Hart's not going to put his eyes towards the basket when he's out there, are you really sacrificing much by swapping him and Mitch? Are you really? Because Mitch gives you the rebounding that Josh Hart can give you. I understand Hart's an amazing rebounder. His rebounds arguably won us Game 3. You still need him to play a lot of minutes. I don't need him playing 45, though. I don't need him playing 45 if he's not going to be taking shots, if he's not going to be willing to put the ball in the basket, and if he's kind of just going to go out there, take the ball up the court, and then kind of just look around like a lost puppy trying to find Jalen Brunson. I don't need that out there for 45 minutes. I don't. I'd rather get Mitchell Robinson in there to protect the paint because Karl-Anthony Towns cannot do that. You know what I mean? We could sit here all day and discuss all these different schemes, go into X's and O's, all the nuances about the Knicks and Tom Thibodeau and all this stuff, but we're really approaching a high, long mark in this episode, so I do think we can wrap this up soon. But before I do formally wrap it up, I want to give Ryan one more opportunity to kind of just let out any final thoughts and really what you think could determine Thibodeau's job going forward. If it's like fully safe right now, it doesn't matter if they end up losing the next two to Indiana or if he needs to show more or whatever. Go ahead and just let it out.
He needs to show me more, but I will say this right now. The New York Knicks have an opportunity tonight to kind of, if they win tonight, I think they win the series. I'm going to be honest. This team is good. The Knicks are good. Despite everything. Despite all the emotions that they'll make you feel, they're good. They're not a bad team. They're a good team. They have had so many green flags in terms of, player progression in the postseason. When there's a saying, are you men or are you mice? And a lot of guys who I kind of I want to have them around next year, when I've asked that question, they're men, not mice. Mikal Bridges, how many times has he come up with the game-winning defensive play?
A lot.
He has been remarkable in clutch situations. Is he a superstar? No. Do I think he's a star? No. Do I think I would trade 5 first-round picks for him, knowing, just based on production alone, not adjusting for leverage? No. Would I give up $50,000 for first-round picks just to have beaten Boston that series? I would give up my ability to have kids to win the finals. All right, so that's my answer there. The New York Knicks, look at all the guys like Miles McBride on a really cheap contract. He's an awesome role player. Mitchell Robinson, if you want to have him back next year, he's a helpful guy. If you want to trade him, I'm sure a team's going to be like this guy who was locking down Boston, who Joe Mazzulla was trying to foul out of every game. Yeah, yeah, I'll take him. You know what I mean? And then finally, the guy who's obviously the captain, everything, Jalen Brunson. If you have any doubts about Jalen Brunson, and if the Knicks don't win this series, you're going to see a lot of people say, you see, we were right. He's not a 1A. BS. BS. This guy's a number 1. My season's on the line. I'm willing to go to him, and I'm willing to trust him. And I'm willing to trust him with my life. Okay? This is the biggest game the Knicks have played in our lifetime. Bar none. Biggest game. Jalen Brunson has been money in these situations, Dylan. I trust him with my life. I've trusted him with my life this entire postseason. He's delivered every single time, basically. If he does it again, and he gets this team to the finals somehow, I'm not saying it just be on him, but the reservation should be gone. You should feel like this team can beat anyone. And you should feel like this team can beat anyone because they beat Boston. Men or mice? We're going to find that out in Game 4.
Yeah, not even just in Game 4, but the rest of the series, because who knows? If they end up dropping Game 4 and they go down 3-1, that's obviously very dire straits. I mean, it's very rare that a team has ever come back down 3-1 in a playoff series, but who knows, baby? The Knicks can regroup and figure it out. Or, what you said, the Knicks could win tonight in Indy, take both on the road, head back to the Garden 2-2, possibly win the whole series, make it to the finals, and all that stuff. But we'll cross that bridge whenever we get there. But bottom line, Tom Thibodeau has shown a lot of good stuff, but a lot of questionable things at the same time, which, all coaches have those moments. I'm not just, singling out Tibbs for that. But I think we can all agree that, in a perfect world, we're still a little undecided about how we feel about him. And I think what happens the rest of this playoffs is really going to determine that for me, for whether or not I believe they firmly need to move on from him, or they should keep him for however long. Because I know they extended him this past offseason, but obviously coach extensions mean very little. So, they could easily just fire him whenever they want to. But, at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and say, let's fire him right now. I want to wait it out and see how it goes. And before I make those firm decisions, we're going to wait till the season ends. And the season's not over yet. We're lucky to be here. We're glad to be even talking about this situation and be even talking about the Knicks in a playoff setting this far in. We're almost into June, and we're still watching Knicks games. We've never gotten to do that before. So we're very happy for that. So, that's really all I got to say, and I do think this is a good spot to finally wrap the episode up. I know it was very long, but I do think we really needed to talk about it because it's one of the biggest talking points of not just the Knicks, but in the entire NBA as well. So, I think it was something really worth talking about. We really appreciate you guys watching it, though. I hope you guys enjoyed it. You can follow us on all of the social media platforms we're on. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and of course this YouTube page that you just watched the video on. You can also find the audio versions of this on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And you can also follow me and Ryan's personal Twitter accounts. They're right there above our heads. And we'll see you guys in the next episode of Fireside Knicks. Peace out, and let's go Knicks.